What's going on, everybody? My name is Aiden and welcome back to another video. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to be discussing sort of the things that we've kind of seen from training camp thus far. I recently, not too long ago, made a video talking about the Chicago Bulls, what I expect from their training camp. And ultimately, today we are going to be discussing some of the outcomes we have seen from training camp thus far. To be honest, I'm a little bit surprised, but at the same time, I'm kind of happy with what we've seen. There is a little bit of worrying concerns that I think could continue to plague the Chicago Bulls heading into the main regular season, but so far, I have been impressed. Let's talk about it in this video, but before we get any further, if you like the video and you want to see more from me, drop a like, drop a follow, and or subscribe if you are new, and let me know what you guys think about the Chicago Bulls and ultimately their training camp thus far. Do you think it's been a good time? Do you think it's been a bad time? Do you think it's somewhere in the middle? Or ultimately, do you feel like maybe none of this really does matter, and all that does matter is what you see in preseason and what you see in the regular season's beginnings? So we have a game against Cleveland not too long from now, and ultimately what you see in those training camp displays, highlight videos, some of the quotes, everything in between, you will probably get to see more of in that preseason game because it is going to be televised, or at least it's going to be on the NBA League Pass, and many Bulls fans will finally get to see it firsthand without faults, without editing or anything like that, because that's what the worry is when you watch training camp videos, and that's the first thing I'll take away. A lot of it is highly edited. You get to see the highlights, you get to see the glimpses, but you don't get to see the full thing. You don't get to see the full training sessions, however long they may be. You don't get to see the intensity each and every single drill. You get to see the highlights of that. So that's why I don't want to take anything away from this Bulls team at the moment, but I also don't want to overhype it a little bit and maybe jump to conclusions with the Chicago Bulls team as well. Right now, where I stand, I like what I see, but I can fully understand it is just a bunch of highlights put together in a video, a bunch of quotes put together in a video. But I'm starting to see things and hear things that very much intrigue me. Firstly, I've heard that it's very intense, a much more intense training camp than previous years. And look, I think this makes perfect sense. For starters, when you have players in the past like Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Vucevic, very experienced players, you kind of trust them to set the tempo of training camp. Now that, outside of Vucevic, of course, our team is relatively young. Our team is relatively inexperienced. So Vucevic may, he's kind of that team player anyway. But when I look at the Chicago Bulls, I don't see where the leadership is in terms of training camp, and that's where the coaching staff will have to come in, and it's clear that that's what's happening. Billy Donovan is much more intense when he speaks. He's very aggressive, he's screaming, he's shouting. You don't see that from Billy Donovan very often. You don't see a screaming and shouting Billy Donovan, but I feel like that is happening because this team is so young, and now that leadership role has kind of fell to that head coach, if you know what I mean. When you have DeMar DeRozan is going to help dictate the pace of these training camps, and since he is a little bit of a slower tempo guy, maybe the training camps were not as intense. I wouldn't even say that because that's disrespectful, but maybe not as quick paced, fast paced, and pushing the tempo in that sort of way, and maybe physical, whatever the case may be. So, the training camp is kind of, I would say, the players' leadership, if you know what I mean. Whereas I feel like this time around, it's the coach's leadership. But something else that I find very interesting, and this is a quote that I heard, I don't know if this is true or not, but apparently the Chicago Bulls have taken more charges in this preseason than they have the entirety of the 82-game season last season. If you guys are well aware, the Bulls were one of the worst teams in taking charges in the league. I think we were in the bottom five of taking charges. We were in the bottom half of the league. I very rarely remember any charges that we took, and most of the charges that we took were probably push-offs more than anything, not actually setting your feet and taking charges the natural way you'd expect. There was a little bit of a highlight clip of Isaac Okoro taking a charge and everybody getting around him, showing love and that energy and stuff of that nature. It's beautiful that we're taking charges, and it is a big part of the game that we haven't seen much of. And to be fair, I never really mentioned this in any of the game reactions that we don't take enough charges. It's because it's a little bit of a lost art in the Chicago Bulls team. It's something you forget about because you don't see it very often. So now that we should see more of it, I hope that this energy is contagious. I hope the players you know, Isaac Okoro obviously coming in and bringing that energy and taking charges. I hope that translates to others. Kobe White could start taking more charges. Ayo could take more charges. Josh Giddey could take more charges. I hope that energy is contagious. Very similar to how Lonzo Ball was with the Chicago Bulls and his defensive acumen. It was contagious, and everybody else strived to be a better defender when he was on the court. I hope it's very similar when Isaac Okoro is on the court. This team is willing to put their body on the line, because that really is what Chicago was known for. When I think of the championship teams, yeah, sure, we were very talented, but we were a gritty team. We fought. We put our body on the line for every possession. Every possession meant something. We will dive at anything to make sure that that was our possession. When I think of the recent Derrick Rose era of the Chicago Bulls, you know, I think of players that are diving for the ball. I think of the Joakim Noahs. I think of the Luol Dengs. I think of Kirk Heinrichs. I think of these players. And even recently with Caruso when he left, that's what I think about. I've got to be honest. That's what I think about, ladies and gentlemen. So we need to see more charges, and hopefully this is the next step in achieving that goal. Other than that, I feel like training camp has been rather, you know, I wouldn't say basic, but it's been very, very, I guess, standard. The rest of the things you kind of expect. So those are the big changes that we have seen. We have seen very intense training camps. We have seen more physical training camps. We have seen a more aggressive head coach in this training camp. I think the leadership has kind of changed from some of the players to the head coach now, and this is kind of the results of that. All I think of now is try to avoid as many injuries as possible. There were recent rumors that Patrick Williams got hurt in training camp, and Josh Giddey had a bit of a bum ankle in training camp. Kobe White was obviously very limited in training camp. You don't want to start the season with half your players not healthy. So I would say try to have game management and maybe training management there, just so we can balance things out a little bit, so we can have everybody ready for the beginning of the season. But also when it comes to training camp and preseason, it all reflects on the court. It all reflects on the court. So all this intense training, intense experiences, physicality, verbalness, vocalness, all of it, if that is not shown against Cleveland, even in the slightest, then you have to ask the question of whether or not it all meant something. And that's a very, very, very difficult conversation to have. So it starts with Cleveland. It will move on to the next preseason games. And then when game one begins, when we have all the excuses and all of the time set aside and the actual games begin, all this training camp needs to mean something when you put it together on the court. There are some training camps where I feel like that never happened. Remember that training camp when the Bulls were focusing on playing faster, moving the ball? It was no isolation whatsoever. And that sort of gameplay, that's the game style, everybody wanted to see. But when it actually came to preseason, we saw it. We saw this team move the ball so effortlessly. It was beautiful to watch. And then come the regular season, when things didn't go our way, we reverted back to isolation. That was with Zach DeMar and Vucevic. I think it was the last season that they all had together. It reverted back. So training camp, it needs to mean something. And it needs to translate over to every game. Not just a few. Not just the beginning of the season and then, oh, we forgot how to take charges now. Or maybe it's something doesn't go our way. We stop doing the basics. We stop doing the fundamentals. We stop putting our body on the line. Maybe we're down by 20. We don't go for loose balls anymore and stuff of that nature. That is what we can't see. And too many times when we have had training camps and we had tried something new, we've always reverted back. We've reverted back in some way. So that's what I take away from this training camp. And that's what I hope, again, can translate over to the regular season. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay tuned for more. Take care and peace.